And we have coming up right now the man who put this all together, a man who is totally brave and has put himself at a certain personal risk to be able to bring all these people together from all over the country and all over the world. And I'm talking about John Whyte. And John Whyte, if you haven't met him yet, he's now your new best friend. Because this guy is an example of what leadership looks like and what one man can do. And I'm just going to give you a final quick example of how just one of us can make a difference. We have found that high fructose corn syrup, everyone in here know what that is? Everyone in here not want to get near that stuff by 100 miles? We know what it does. We know what it does to the liver. We know what it does to blood sugar. We know what it does just in general. Well, it took about 14 to 16% of us as a population to learn about it and start talking about it on the internet and saying this stuff is really bad. That small amount was enough to scare the hell out of the corporations, Kellogg's, Post, General Mills, the other ones that actually produce this stuff and put it in cereals and in sodas for them to withdraw it. If you go into the grocery store today and look at Post Raisin Bran, across the top of the box in a yellow banner with red printing, it will say no high fructose corn syrup. They have changed their business model because of you, and only from a tiny volume of us. That's all it takes. This is the good news. It's not like some democracy where it has to be a majority of 63% of us, like in Congress. It does not need to be that. A handful of us vocally, passionately putting it forth will change corporate behavior, and that's one of the end games today. So the man who has done that, who has made this possible for us today, is John Whyte. Let me introduce him now. That's you, John.
Thanks, man. Hey, everybody. I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to get nervous. I always like that. Thanks for coming. Welcome to the first Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails conference and fundraiser. This is really what we're hoping is going to become a driving force of more vehicles for awareness, more conferences, more documentaries, more action. All of you here today in person and all of you here today online are taking action. I'm not sure if Harrison mentioned it, but everybody's watching online. They're going to be able to download all of the content after this event is over. They're going to be able to download every presenter and distribute it throughout their communities and get the word out. So we really want this to be able to go worldwide. It's really an honor to have not just a beautiful LA audience, but also to have an international audience, because this problem is certainly not isolated to Los Angeles. This is a worldwide issue. It's in minimum 29 countries. I'm sure there's many more. So we're able to reach everybody, which I think is excellent. I wanted to just talk for a moment of why I'm here and why I decided to put this event together. It's always through personal experience that we are driven towards action. It's when something really touches us and affects us that we move. It puts us in motion, it puts us in gear. And I was in international textile manufacturing in Southeast Asia, and we were working with heavy metals in the manufacturing process. So what happened was a great deal of the workers on the manufacturing lines would actually suffer from heavy metal toxicity poisoning. The signs and symptoms are ones that you guys may recognize today among the fellow people around you who are not aware of this issue and who are not detoxing. Vertigo, sleeplessness, discoloration, people would get dizzy, they would lose their balance. I mean, it was really pretty telltale signs of heavy metal toxicities. What we did at that time was we then developed a heavy metal-free textile manufacturing process. And the difference was amazing. It really was. The people who were working at the new facility didn't show any of the signs of the people working in the old manufacturing facility with the heavy metals. So that was kind of the background with heavy metal toxicity. And what happened was I moved to Central California, and I started to recognize the same heavy metal toxicity symptoms in myself that I saw in China. So there's no heavy metal manufacturing, there's no heavy manufacturing whatsoever where I am. So I said, where is this content coming from? At that point, the only place I could look was up. And once I started looking up, I started noticing things. I have a friend who says that people like myself were called sleepers. It means that we were literally walking through a trance state. So many of us see it today around us. There is a matrix which has been designed to keep us in a trance state. The media, the constant programming on television and advertising, it keeps us looking down, it keeps us in a trance state. It keeps us really out of the pursuit of consciousness and the pursuit of oneness, and it certainly doesn't have us looking towards corruptions against us. So my awakening came with my heavy metal toxicity. From that, I started looking up. I then was led to Michael Murphy's film. From there, the pieces started to come together very quickly for me. I had to take action in terms of finding out what was in the air, what was in the rain. So we started something called Chemtrails Project, and we started testing rainwater around the country, but we also started testing it in the UK. We just started testing in Australia, so we're really doing a global reach. And what we found was the same thing that all of the geoengineering patents have been telling us. Aluminum, barium, strontium, some manganese. So at that point, I said, this is real. This is not theory. This is certainly not conspiracy theory. It's not that grouping conspiracy which allows people to write it off and turn ahead to it. So I took a snapshot of our entire movement, everybody here, everybody who's doing great research, and I said, there's one thing we're really missing, in my opinion, and that was a flagship event, something where we could all meet together, worldwide, online and in person, and compile all of the different data, all of the different research, and review it together. There is going to be research here that covers every arm of the spray agendas. The connection to GMOs, the very obvious connection to GMOs as it relates to food, crops, as it also relates to things like you'll hear about, such as genetically modified trees, plant life. Everything that is living around us is being modified. A synthetic world being built around us, and the driving vehicle for that is geoengineering. We're going to hear about how it relates to transhumanism. We're going to hear about how it relates to weather modification, how it relates to the profitability of more corporations, which of course is always the at least top layer to all of the conspiracies, and all of the tyranny is always profit. We're going to review all of that, and we're going to have a chance to really break it down together. There's going to be some information here, no doubt, that may not resonate with you, because my intent was to cover every single arm of the agenda. So if something doesn't resonate with you, just let it pass. Take what does resonate with you and please further that research. Get the word out in your communities. Just really push that information along. And it's a long conference. It's 3 days. So, we are all troopers. We're sitting here, and you can see the passion from everybody, not just here, but online. There are people around the world doing viewing parties. There's even people who set up a viewing party in a bar, and they're all getting together to watch it. It's great. There's just some real passion and some real fire and some motivation. So, it's quite an honor to be able to put this on for everybody. So, I'm hoping that everybody can take away, of course, the awareness. Everybody can spread the awareness. And we really just want everybody to feel like they're not alone in the issue. There's too many of these things are created to isolate us. They're created to make us feel alone, make us feel helpless. Little old me, I have no power. We are showing that we have power, we are aware, and we are taking action. We are taking community action. We are also leading along the lines to being at a point of consciousness which is beyond all of this. Hence the name of this conference, Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails. We don't want to just look at the issues and say we're doomed. That is not the case. More and more people like us are waking up every single day. And when we reach critical mass, we will absolutely affect change. It happened throughout the course of history, every single time. It is happening right now in GMOs. The world is waking up in unison. It is the most beautiful, magnificent thing, and we can all see it. And that's going to happen with geoengineering. Patience is a key. Understanding of our fellow brothers who cannot see it, because we have to remember they are programmed to not see it. As many of us were programmed by this electronic matrix to not see things, they were also programmed. So we have to have patience with them. When they're ready for the information, they will wake up to it, and they will join us. And it's happening in droves. So it really is a wonderful thing. The last point I just wanted to leave with you guys is there's one thing that no tyranny can ever suppress, and that is the awakening. This awakening is not something that is one day you're like, hey, wait a minute, I think I understand that this is not normal contrails, or I think I understand that GMOs are not good for me. As all of you realize, I am sure, it is much more than that. It is a personal journey as well. There is always seeds of doubt being planted. There is always so-called science being thrown at us to try to shut down our perspectives, to try to make us more closed-minded and keep us in the hive. We always need to resist that, because we always need to remember that first moment of awakening, that first beautiful moment where we burst out and said, I'm awake, these are all lies, I can see the tyranny around me, and I've had enough of it. Hold that awareness, hold that awakening, and nothing can stop us.
It's all about getting the word out there and allowing people the opportunity to open up and understand exactly what's happening, and then for us all together as the collective that's being so affected by all of this to work on solutions together, and that's what we're all about. Our next speaker, or our first speaker for today, is quite accomplished. He worked for Bechtel Power with a background in solar energy, and I promise that we're not going to hold this against him. He's the founder of, or he's actually a member of Geo-Engineering.org. It's one of the most comprehensive websites on the spray agendas, and so that's Geo-Engineering.org. You'll want to visit that site. He is certainly one of the most well-researched, reputable faces in the movement, and his title today for his presentation is Geo-Engineering, Why You Should Care. I'd like you all to give a warm welcome to Dave Wigington.
Good morning to all those who managed to get up this time of day for this event. I appreciate that. I think those of you that are here realize the gravity of the situation that we face. The case I'll try to make today is that geoengineering, if one looks at the data that's available, is a very all-encompassing issue, and one that rationally supersedes a long list of other legitimate issues. The totality of implication from geoengineering is difficult to get one's arms around. The effects it's having on the planet today would be impossible to quantify. The process by which I became involved with this issue was my background in solar. I have one of the largest off-grid solar homes in Northern California, and in 2001, 2002, when I began to lose on certain days 50, 60, 70% of my solar uptake from whatever aircraft were emitting overhead, it was very apparent that something was wrong. And an investigation quickly led me to the subject of geoengineering. And after perhaps a year and a half of research, I began to do water testing. And Northern California, being the jet stream that comes off the Pacific, it was thought to have pristine air and precipitation. And a water test initially of 7 parts per billion of aluminum in a single rain event over the course of 5 years, that aluminum count escalated as high as 3,450 parts per billion. That's nearly a 50,000% increase. And over the course of a decade now of research on this issue, I have in fact come to the conclusion that it is the most dire issue we face, short of nuclear contamination. To the skeptics, of which there are still a multitude, I would ask, why in the world would we not believe this is going on when we have officials currently in the Obama administration, John Holdren, Obama's science advisor, who openly have shown support for these programs? Why would we not believe this spraying is occurring when you have groups of scientists like the Arctic Methane Emergency Group, who have, for the third time, called for immediate wartime scale geoengineering? On that group, there are geoengineers. Ken Caldera, I'm told, is one of those. Why would we not believe this when everything we see in the sky matches exactly what patents describe as an express goal, the blocking of the sun, solar obscuration? Why would we not believe this is occurring when the material is showing up on the ground in dozens and dozens of tests in our county alone, not to mention those around the world, are exactly the same elements named in a long list of geoengineering patents? The only defense I've really heard, the primary defense from those that would deny this issue, are the government wouldn't do that to us. That's a very, very, very lame defense, and I think we have enough history to know that, as we have seen already from the W&D in Iraq, from Agent Orange, from the Gulf oil spill, and a long list of other issues. One thing we can be sure of is that governments, in fact, lie. The global power structure, as you've already seen in many of the other presenters' statements, it seems intent on controlling everything. And in trying to do so, has put virtually everything at risk. And as these programs go on, I'll outline the decimation they are causing, which many people are unaware of. The decimation of the ozone layer, if many have felt how intense the sun is on your face of late. There's a massive ozone hole over the northern hemisphere now that Canadian scientists on a research team are being muzzled on this issue. And this is not the southern hemisphere ozone hole that we've all heard about for several decades. This is new. And the damage is already showing up in Northern California where we live. We're seeing cases of leaf scorch, bark scorch, and other symptomatic signs of this very, very intense UV. And there is no scientific dispute on the effect of particulates in the atmosphere in relation to destroying ozone. There's no dispute even amongst the geoengineers. Any particulate in the atmosphere will in fact destroy ozone. So, in the course of the stated goal of geoengineering, that we are told to, it's a climate mitigation, they are literally painting us into a corner with a long list of issues. Everybody's aware of the drought that's going on right now, another issue in which there is no dispute in the scientific community. Geoengineering particulates, any particulates in the atmosphere, diminish and disperse rainfall, period. Too many condensation nuclei, I believe that we went over in the film, causes rainfall to migrate elsewhere. It reduces evaporation. At this point right now, the atmosphere is so saturated with these particulates that the latest figures on global dimming show it somewhere in the range of 20%. 20% of the sun's direct rays are no longer reaching the planet. Many might wonder why the NATO powers have all now reduced or eliminated their renewable energy programs, like solar. That's why solar is going into the ditch. Well, it doesn't make much sense to spend billions spraying the sky, blocking the sun, and then try to do renewable energy. Sure seems like a backward step, I would say. There is also there are feedback loops that now appear to be triggered, and this is an area that I don't think many in the movement have covered. It's more my area of study and research. And It's these feedback loops that I believe will help us expose geoengineering. As they decimate the climate, as they thwart Earth's natural processes, they are certainly playing a part in the triggering of events that now seem to be underway. Many have heard about the methane releases occurring in places in the Arctic, but the seeps they show are meaningless in comparison to the field that now seems to be releasing in the East Siberian Shelf of the Arctic. And again, if people don't understand what methane is, it's a greenhouse gas that is many times more potent than CO2. And I know we have the argument, many within this movement have made a point of beating the drum that climate change is a hoax. And I think we've alienated many from the academic community by beating that drum. Certainly, whatever the cause, there is no denying that anthropogenic warming is happening. And I'm not here to speak on that issue, but I'm saying if you have jets circling the sky, covering the planet, shredding the ozone layer, killing the boreal forests, that's a human-caused warming event by itself. And so what these guys are doing to the climate, literally, aside from being poisoned, aside from all the effects from the spraying itself, they are potentially triggering other mechanisms on the planet that now have a life of their own, that are now global game-changing events on their own. And this is what needs to be considered, and to not alienate academia and deny a very obvious fact of which we see around the planet right now. The spraying, as has already been alluded to, certainly, although it can create, I believe the data reflects this, it can create temporary and regional cooling effects, certainly, at the cost of a worsened overall warming, because the radiant heat is trapped. And again, as the ozone layer is shredded, more UV intensity penetrates the planet. That heats seawater. The warmer seawater is now releasing methane hydrates from the sea floor, again on the East Siberian Shelf. So the totality of damage being done by geoengineering, again, is difficult to comprehend. As I said, the shredding of the atmosphere, the diminishment of rain, global oxygen content is now plummeting. Many don't realize this. And when you poison the boreal forests, these are northern latitude forests, Siberia, Pacific Northwest, etc. These are the lungs of the planet. When you saturate those forests with bioavailable aluminum, the effects of which are well documented, then these trees do not grow as they should. They do not uptake nutrients as they should. They do not emit oxygen as they should. So again, as the title of this talk, Geoengineering, Why You Should Care, because they are thwarting every natural mechanism on the planet. They are thwarting every avenue by which the planet would respond to the damage done to it. And I believe in doing so are making an already dark situation much, much worse. On the methane issue, again, this is an issue that could change our reality in the course of 1 or 2 years, and we're already seeing the effects of that. We've had 50,000 temperature records set in the continental U.S. so far this year, and yet they spray away. They spray away and continuing to trap heat overall in the atmosphere and continuing to damage the ozone layer and thwarting the rainfall. On geoengineeringwatch.org, we have been posting satellite photos of the North Pacific. Many have noticed of late that the overhead spraying is reduced. It's certainly reduced in our area in Northern California. But the satellite imagery shows massive blanket spraying of the North Pacific. And this, in effect, is shutting down the hydrological cycle, which keeps the rain from coming into the continent. It keeps cyclonic rotation from forming. We're now seeing the same type of blanket spraying in the Southern Pacific off the coast of South America. We're seeing similar spraying off the coast of Western Europe. So whatever they're doing differently with the experiment, make no mistake, they have not stopped. They have not stopped. They have not slowed down. In addition to the methane issue, the Arctic ice pack is absolutely, positively coming apart. All the science says so. And again, my talk is not to advocate global warming. It's not to be an Al Gore fan. I'm not. I'm not a carbon credit fan. But I'm simply trying to make the point that the medical industry exists to capitalize off death and suffering. We all agree on that. That doesn't mean death and suffering isn't happening. And whatever the cause of the damage to the planet, I think we can point the finger at this moment squarely at geoengineering. Unless or until it stops, we should blame everything on that for the moment. Although we should all take responsibility for the fact that the decimation of the planet certainly is happening on top of geoengineering. But the Arctic ice pack right now, again, adds to this total equation. I'm trying to paint the picture that if these climate issues are not stopped, if the methane release happens, if the Arctic ice pack is eliminated, that, and all fueled by the spraying on top, as a causal factor here, that if the planet is not allowed to respond, we'll very soon have little to care about. The latest data from Biomass, it's a data logging center on the Arctic ice thickness. It looks as if the Arctic ice pack may break up this year. Many have heard 2100, many have heard 2070, 2050. The latest data suggests this year. And I believe this will help us in the end to expose geoengineering, because as cataclysmic as these climate events are, I believe it will make it very difficult for the powers that be to hide these programs and what they're doing. So if there's a silver lining in these events that are now unfolding, I believe it will be to expose geoengineering. If the ice breaks up, ice pack reflects about 92 to 93% of the sun's incoming rays. That's the albedo of the ice. That's the claim purpose of geoengineering, to reflect the sun's rays. Again, a short-term cooling at the cost of a much worsened overall warming in the end. So as the ice pack breaks up and seawater is exposed, now you have 90+% of the sun's rays absorbed. Again, that heats the seawater, which releases the methane from the seafloor. The temperature change releases this methane, and methane releases in entire fields. The Bermuda Triangle, of which many have heard lots of stories about, the scientific consensus is the Bermuda Triangle is methane release, period. As methane is released from the seafloor, it aerates the water like a bottle of champagne, and ships cannot hold their buoyancy. So this methane release has been going on for a very long time. And again, the reason I'm harping on this methane, no pun intended, that I'm focusing on this methane issue so much is because it's happened twice in the Earth's past. 255 million years ago, into the Permian era, and 55 million years ago, Paleocene, Eocene, both mass extinctions. 70% terrestrial extinction, 94% ocean extinction. So the mechanisms which may have been triggered by the spraying are much broader than people already understand. It's not just poisoning the air we breathe, poisoning the soils we need to grow in, poisoning the waters we need, which is bad enough, certainly, but there are much bigger events that appear now to have been triggered. The species extinction rate today is 1,000 times natural variability. As I stated in the film, that's 100,000% of normal. You don't see our media talking much about this. And this morning, as I make myself watch Fox News and CNN, and just, I make myself view these things to see how idiotic it all is, and this sort of garbage about what the new Happy Meal is, and what Mitt Romney said yesterday about his tax returns, and all the ridiculousness, while the planet is literally in meltdown, while the spraying continues and sucks the noose around our neck with every day that they saturate us with these particulates. I think the public as a whole obviously does not want the truth about many issues, but this truth won't be ignored much longer. The damage we've seen in my area, in the forests, are incredible. As water testing taken by Francis Mangels, a very honorable former U.S. Forest Service biologist in our area, who has historically taken water tests of the tributary streams in what was thought to be a pristine forested area, and measured a decline in aquatic insect life of up to 95% over a decade. This is staggering. Some years back, 2 or 3 years back, I published data on returning salmon in our region that had also amazingly declined 95%. So at what point does this become a crisis that can't be ignored? I think we're very, very near that point. If there were more honorable men like Francis Mangels, this would not be hidden. I personally know people with California Department of Fish and Game, biologists who know of this issue and are extremely alarmed but unwilling to speak out for obvious reasons. I know people with United States Department of Agriculture. Soil scientists that I've tested soils with in the forest floor came up with measurements that were 10 to 15 times higher than they were only a few years back. Because we do have solid soil baseline pH studies in our Northern California counties. These scientists also, aware of the geoengineering, also unwilling to speak out. 2 months ago, I was at a marine laboratory in the Pacific Coast that has NOAA employees. When I convinced one female employee to talk to me off the record, she made it clear to me that they absolutely know these programs are going on. Again, unwilling to speak out for obvious reasons, but they are alarmed as hell, in their words. And the argument I would